Hey guys, and welcome back to the IR Gurus channel. My name is Nick, and I am back here to discuss the similarities between customizations and the rules and workflows and playbooks. So, if you're familiar with building workflows, it should be fairly easy to move into building playbooks. So, what we're going to do here is on the left hand side, I'm going to have the workflows. On the right hand side, I am going to have the playbooks. And we're essentially going to build the same playbook or workflow. So the first one, on when I walked through my previous video, we were kind of working through these tabs from right to left. That's essentially how you would build a workflow. The difference is playbooks is actually basically going to go from left to right as we go through here. So what I mean by that is when you start a playbook, you are creating the name or you're creating the rule. So in here, say we create a menu item. So we can create the same one. We'll call this playbook versus workflow. Sounds good to me. And of course, if I wanted to add a description, I could do that. I will hit create, and that'll start us as building our playbook here. However, on this side, if I wanted to create the rule, then what I would actually be doing is I would have to have a workflow already in progress. But since I don't have a workflow in progress, I would essentially have to close this, go out to workflow, and start working on that workflow, right? So what we're going to do here, though, before we start our workflow, we're going to start our playbook. And what I wanted to show you guys is the similarities here. So we've already established what the name is, but now what we're going to establish is the activation type. Well, when I clicked new rule, so I came in here and I clicked new rule, I chose what the activation type is. It's going to be a menu item. If I wanted to do the exact same thing on this side, I would say that it's going to be a manual item. So now we've got the rule type or the activation type over here. We've got the activation type over here. We've got the name here. And so now we'll do the name over here, which would be workflow versus playbook. But now we need to choose the object type. Now, this one's already got incident as the object type. So if I wanted to create this as the same object type, of course, I just come in here and I choose incident. And now we've basically hit the same point. Now, the rest of the similarities for this, like I said, this is more building the rule first. So on the right hand side, we want to build the conditions. So we click down here and we can create our conditions. On the left hand side over here, where we're building the workflow, we would actually click here on add new and we would build the conditions over here. For this one, I'm just going to go ahead and click X on both of those. Cancel these out. Now, if I wanted to create an activation form, down on the workflow side, what I would do is I would just click the show activity fields, which now it says hide activity fields. But before I clicked it, that's what it said. Now we would build our layout of how we want this to show over here. So we can decide that we want this one says just Boolean field. Not entirely sure what that is. But we wanted a Boolean field. We move that over here. If I wanted to do that same thing on this side, I would actually go to the activation form here. I would hit create form, and then I could just create a Boolean field, and we'll just call this, just for simplicity's sake, since they have it on the left-hand side, Boolean field. And then, of course, we can set any kind of always or anything like that, and we hit add to form, and now we've done the same thing on both of these. So we can hit done. And this one, unfortunately, I can't click done yet because I don't have the workflow to attach to it. Now is where we've got that difference. If I wanted to complete the rule, I have to actually go out to workflows first. So we'll go out to workflows and we'll continue the workflows from the actual starting place of the workflows while we're further along now in the playbooks. What we'll do is we'll create a new workflow over here. Got our starting point. We've got our starting point. Now we want to add a new task over here. So let's say we want to add a task here of initial triage, and we'll add another task of interview key individuals. Now over here on the same side, what I want to do is I want to add those same things. So we'll do initial triage, interview key individuals. I'll bring them down here. There we go. We've got the same thing on both sides. Now, if I want both of these things to happen at the exact same time, this is a difference that we have. Within Playbooks, I just connect both. Now, they're both going to happen at the same time. However, over on the workflow side, if I want both of these to happen at the same time, what I have to do is I have to add the AND gateway here. Then after I add this AND gateway, I've got to connect the starting point to the AND gateway, and then from the AND gateway, I've got to connect each one of these tasks. So now we've hit this point, we can add those, or we've added these tasks here. And now we want both of these tasks to be completed before we move on to our next step. So maybe our next step is going to be some kind of function, right? To add row here. So same thing here. We want to do a function, and we want it to be a add row. Drop this down here. Now, this is again a similarity. So before we can move on to here, we need to hit a spot where we're basically going to wait until both of these tasks are completed. In the workflow side, we call that the AND gateway again. So what we would do is we would add that in, and then of course we would connect both of those to the AND gateway. And now both of these have to be completed before we will move from the AND gateway onto the function here. Now, we would do something similar over here, except for it's a decision point called wait point. We would drop this down here. We would connect these up here. There we go. Get those to match up. My OCD bothers me. All right. From there, now what we're going to do is we can connect this waypoint to here, and this is essentially the same thing over here. So both of these have to be completed to get past the waypoint, and then we're going to do this function. Now, the functions is another point in which they are different between the playbook and the workflow. In the workflow, if I wanted to alter the function, I would click this pen here, and I can add my inputs manually over here. I can, of course, add my inputs manually over here as well. If I wanted to instead use a variable or build a script out to populate these fields, what I would do on this side, I'd go to my pre-process script. On this side, I would go to my script. From here, we can do the exact same thing. Type in inputs dot incident ID equals incident dot ID, and that's going to populate whatever the incident ID of the incident that kicked this playbook off is going to be populated into the function inputs of incident ID. On this one, same thing. If I want to add inputs dot incident ID, then I do equals incident dot ID. I've done the same thing. So these are very similar. Once I complete these though, on this side, or for the playbooks, I'll go ahead and save that. I'm done with that script. But we're going to move on to the outputs, which output over here is an option. However, I can also go to a post-process script, which will allow me to take whatever the output is of this, of this function, and manipulate that data in some way, such as putting it back in as an incidents field, or adding them to IOCs, or whatever whatever we're going to want to do with the data that that function returns to us. On the right-hand side, the playbook side, we just have the option to do the output. So here we're going to call this, we'll call it data table output. On the left-hand side, if we wanted to do the same thing, we're going to call it data table output. So essentially now we're doing the same thing. However, most of the time I found myself on the workflows, I would actually just write a post-process script to do something. The only time I would really use the output is if I planned on using it in a later field or a later function or something like that down this way. So maybe there was data in this that I needed to manipulate in another way to get additional information. So that's how I could do that. Now, what we do on the right-hand side for playbooks is we just do that off the bat. We write it to an output and we allow you to manipulate that data later. And that could very well be if I basically wanted to get to a point where I was just writing a post-process script, then what I would do is I would just add a script here, add a local script by hitting create script here, and then writing my post-process script and providing it a name. So by accessing that post-process script, or by accessing the data for the post-process script, what I would do is I would go playbook dot functions dot results dot data table output. And now I've got that same data that I would have had here to play with as results. I've got here, and I can just call this results if I want to. So essentially I have the equivalent now. So at this point I have results already defined in the post-process script. And now I've defined results and I can do what I want over here. Once I finish this, call it output script. I can add this to it and drop this down here. Now, I know that this may seem like, well, that's a lot more complicated. That doesn't make sense. Why would I want to go from the easier route where I could just access that data here to the harder route? Well, the difference is over here, what I can do is I can run 5, 6, 7 functions to pull a bunch of information back in, and then just use one script to process all of that data. Where over here, I'm only accessing the data that I really have within this one here. And if I wanted to access that data outside of it, or I wanted to write a script where I could process all of that data putting it into an output. Now, if I wanted to write a script to parse the output for this, I've got to come back out. I've got to save this. I've got to go out to scripts. I've got to write that script, then come back in here and hope that that script works. Otherwise, I got to come back in here, edit this, go back out to scripts, change the script, just kind of a mess. So we allow you to access it all from here. Of course, you link this here, and now you've got the same thing over here as you do over here, kind of in a cleaner format. From there, of course, we can come through here and we can add sub playbooks, just like we can add the sub workbooks over here. So if we wanted to add that, we can of course do that. I'm going to leave off that because I don't have a sub playbook specifically in parallel with my sub workflow over here. So we can build that out. Of course, we can add additional tasks. We can add additional functions and automations. Of course, we can add additional scripts. I already mentioned the playbooks just a second ago. And then, of course, our additional condition points. Hey guys, Future Nick here. I realized after I recorded this that I completely missed the condition point, or the condition point for playbooks, also known as the inclusive or exclusive gateways over on the workflow side. So I'm going to jump in here real quick and touch on this. The inclusive gateway, I don't really have a lot of use cases for. So what we're going to actually touch on here is the exclusive gateway. Essentially, the inclusive gateway is more of a, there can be multiple true and false statements, or there could be multiple true statements, and We can do that with a condition point. I don't have too many use cases for it. So if you guys have use cases, go ahead and drop comments down below as to maybe how you might use that to help other gurus and myself out. So what we're going to do here, though, is we're going to go off of the exclusive gateway. So we'll drop this in here. And then, of course, we will connect these up. After we get that connected up, we've got our gateway here. On the playbook side, we're going to do the same thing, except for we're going to grab the condition point here. And we can drop that in down here. Oh, like I already dropped it in. So we've got our condition point down here, and then what we'll do is we'll connect that up here just like we did over here. So over on the workflow side, what we would do is if we want to add maybe say we want a couple different tasks for them. Let's go ahead and drop in, determine if illegal activity, and let's drop another task in for, let's go inappropriate internal involvement. So we'll move this over here, and we'll basically have two different pathways that we're going to take from this point out. Now remember, when we get back into what I've already recorded, you're not going to see these, but I wanted to make sure that I jumped in here and demonstrated these for you again. So essentially what we can do is, the way that it works in workflows is we would just go about connecting both of these up. But then after we connected both of these up, we would have to go in and we would have to set what the paths equal. So over here, what we can do is we can click on the pathway, and then we can click the edit button. And then this is where we're going to build our condition. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come up with a name for it. So for this one, I'm going to call this, let's say we're just trying to determine if this is a true incident or if this is a false positive. So what we can do here is we can do true positive. So this is going to be the true positive path that we take. And then we can hit, this add new here. From here, there's a couple ways we can do this. We can either write a script that will allow us to determine this. And essentially what that script needs to come back to is either a true or a false to come down these paths. To keep it simple, what I'm going to do is actually just go ahead and we can select here and we can just choose a field. So for our use case here, I'll do incident disposition. And so this is essentially the field we use to say, is this true or false? Or is this a true incident or a false positive? So what we'll do here is we'll say, since we called this true positive, and so we're going to say this path is the true positive, then the incident disposition, if it is set to confirmed, we're going to go ahead and hit save here. And now this is the true positive path. This is how we end up coming down this path. So essentially when we get here, if your statement is true, it's going to come this way. If your statement is false, it's going to come this way. So the way we go about setting this path too, same way, click the path, click the edit button, call this false positive. We will add a condition, come in and add the same incident disposition here. But this time we're going to go ahead and set this to unconfirmed over here. Save this, and now we've got our true positive path, and then we can, of course, continue down this path to add as many tasks as we want, or we've got our false positive path here. On the playbook side, what we would do is we would actually click, after we add this in, we'd click on the condition, and we can actually just decide here what kind of condition we want. So like I said, for the inclusive gateway on this side, we can do that through the any true condition. But for the exclusive, like I did over here, we're going to do the first true condition. So then we set the conditions down here. We can set these. And of course, we've got our script builder where it kind of explains how you can build out a true or false path here. But we'll come back to the condition builder to, again, keep this simple, just like we did on the previous one. So on this one, we can call this one true positive. We will look for incident disposition again. and then we've got confirmed. And then now here's where there's going to be a slight difference. We always have to have an else path. So essentially the way that we would want to set this on within a playbook is we're going to set the first one to a true positive, and then the false positive is just going to be our else. So basically if it's true, then it goes down this path, else it's going to go down the other path for us. So now once we get that done, we can even name this condition point if we want. So up here we could do, all right, we can call it incident disposition like that. And then of course, you know, get that line straightened out down here. We can just do that. And now we essentially have our OR gateway here. What we can do here is, again, let's go add those tasks that we added in, which was the legal activity was the true positive path, and then the inappropriate one. What we're going to do here is we're just going to link these up. So when we link this up, you're going to link it up just like you did before, except for this time, it's going to ask what that condition is. So if we wanted to follow this one again over here, the illegal activity was our true positive path. So we'll save that one. And then when we link this one over here, this was going to be our false positive path, or for playbooks, we'll call it the else path. We can save that. And then there we go. We've done the same thing. We've created that split, or that decision-making capability within both playbooks and workflow here. All right, now back to my previous recording. Before I finish this off, if I wanted to find a function and I don't remember what the exact name of it is, and say I've got a bunch of integrations here, so I don't want to have to look through a bunch of these, what I can do on the right side for playbooks is simply search for it. This will search through all my tasks, all my functions, scripts, decision points, and it'll give me exactly what I'm searching for. While on the left-hand side, I don't have a search function for that. I just have to go and find it myself. So after we have gone through all of that, what I can do is, maybe we're at the endpoint. There it is. There. So we can do endpoint. Now I can hit add to canvas. I can drop this down here. I can click this and connect it. And now I have finished my playbook. So at this point, what I can do is I can hit save. That will save my playbook. And once I have verified that everything's good here, I've got no errors coming through or anything like that, what I can actually do at this point is I can enable this playbook and I can actually start using this playbook. On the left-hand side, once I've completed this, which I need to add the endpoint here. Now I can hit save. I will call this, got it. That's the other thing. I got to come up with a title for the workflow as well. So this is going to be, so we'll just call that workflow versus playbook workflow. And we'll hit save here. And then if I come over to my rules and I create that new rule, and we'll create it as a menu item to keep them consistent. I'm going to check to see what I did here. I don't think I added any conditions, and I did add, okay, so we'll add the Boolean field here. We're going to, of course, have to add our workflow here, which was workflow versus playbook workflow. And then, of course, here we'll call this workflow versus playbook. And now we've essentially done the same thing on both sides. So we've done the same thing. We've seen the differences. We've seen the similarities. And at this point, I would say, my opinion, you guys, of course, can make your own, but Playbooks is much easier to use, much easier to navigate and work through. And I don't have to jump from tab to tab like I do over here in my customizations. So that is essentially how we have turned Playbooks into a one pane of glass view of creating your SOPs and your automations versus how we used to do it in the workflows and scripts. Now, I will add one thing on. You may say, well, I'm just used to doing it as workflows, so I don't really need to move to Playbooks. I would agree with you at this point, but as of today, there's no real major differences in both of them. However, they're they're almost parodied at this point, like one for one. I mean, I think that there may be one or two things missing, but they're pretty much parodied at this point. But any new features that are going to be created are only going to be created for playbooks, not for workflows. So workflows are done. We are not um, furthering them in any way, shape, or form. We're not creating any new features for workflows. Playbooks, we are definitely still working on those, though. So the last section that I would say is the biggest difference is if we go into an incident, this one is going to be the same. If I wanted to know the progress of a workflow, I would click here on the actions. I would go down to action status, and I would view the status of what's running. I can, of course, change the filter so I can see everything. And then the last section is if I wanted to see specifically where in a workflow we are, I can hit the workflow status here, and I can actually see where in these workflows we are. And that's how I would be able to determine what is going on within an incident. However, within playbooks are a little different. They have their own standout section here where I can click on playbook progress. And I can see the playbooks running. I can see where we've got currently running versus errored versus complete. And so I can see all of that information here. I can see all of the information about the specific instance of the playbook that is running. And then, of course, I can click and get additional information down here if I needed to know why it errored out or something like that. The other thing is, while I'm here, if I wanted to actually view the playbook that is running and try to figure out what's actually going to be taking place in this playbook, I can actually just click the playbook here, and it'll take me directly to the playbook section. So I can actually see what I have built here and exactly what is going to be taking place. So after all of that, I hope that this has helped you guys understand the differences between workflows and playbooks. And now you guys can move forward with building out your playbooks as you used to build out your workflows. And I hope this helps you gurus become better gurus when it comes to building out your SOPs and your automations within IBM SOAR. If you guys thought that this was super helpful, appreciate it if you comment down below and let me know. Also give me a thumbs up and a like. And if you guys have any requests or anything like that for future videos, please go ahead and leave a comment down below as well so that I know what you guys might be interested in learning about the product so that we can go ahead and help educate you and your other fellow gurus. Thanks. Hope to see you guys next time. See ya.